Despite all the advances we've made as a nation in America, it looks like right now things are really, really screwed up in terms of civil unrest. And that's the reason why people are thinking that there may be a civil war happening. The next American Civil War. The last one happened about 161 years ago, from 1861 to 1865. It was mostly fought over slavery and civil rights as well. Well, right now is for a completely new reason, completely different reason. And the reason is that many Americans feel that they're being squeezed by inflation. They're being wrung out by job losses and a president who they feel does not care for them. I want you guys to view these clips, and I'm going to come back later with my thoughts. Some of the stuff you're about to watch is really troubling.
Brothers and sisters, this is it. Get your lives right. Get your households in order while you still can. Civil war is imminent. What is civil war? When there's a war within a nation and people and factions have taken sides within a society, and it causes them to war against one another.
You guys ready for this MAGA civil war? I am. I can't friggin' wait. I mean, it's already started, but you know, these have just been little appetizers, just little tastes. The main course hasn't arrived yet, but it's coming. Just be patient. Hey, we don't want it all at once, right? We want to enjoy this. At least I do. I want this to last as long as possible. I want a gradual build up, and then boom, this fucking thing, it's gonna erupt. It's coming. When it's really gonna come is if current trends continue, if Donald Trump remains as unpopular, you know, a year from now or less than a year from now, when we hit the midterm elections, as he is today, which I think is the most likely scenario. In fact, I think he is likely to be even less popular than he is today, which definitely is possible. I mean, the truth is, we're getting close to only MAGAs, like the hardcore MAGA cults supporting this guy. Nearly every single reputable poll has him in the 30s. In fact, I got a new poll today, and I've got some more information that is bad news for Trump that I'm going to be talking about later this afternoon. So you'll want to make sure you catch that video. But he is horribly unpopular in the 30s. I mean, he can't really go any lower with Democrats. He can't go much lower with independents. He's even losing Republicans. We've got polls that show fewer and fewer Republicans are identifying themselves as MAGA Republicans. Those are Republicans who are turning on Trump. That's what that is. So there's a lot of indication that Trump has lost pretty much all the support that he can lose before he gets to a point where all that he has left are the hardcore MAGA cultists. Now, we've got a little bit of a way to go before we get to that, but we're rapidly approaching that. And even some of the MAGA cultists are starting to wake up and turn on this guy. And boy, it's just going to be glorious. I can't wait. Anyway, I have an article here about an interview that Marjorie Taylor Greene did. I guess I didn't catch it. It was on CNN. What was this, last night with Caitlin Collins? Let me read a little bit of this article for you. This is from the Washington Post. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene on Tuesday, yes, that would be yesterday, on Tuesday, said President Donald Trump has real problems within the Republican Party, adding in an interview with CNN that the president is out of touch with voters on key issues such as affordability. Boy, ain't that the truth. There is not a single issue in which Donald Trump is in positive territory. He is underwater on every issue. Literally, there's not one that he has net positive numbers on. Even his signature issues, you know, supposed to be, he's a great businessman, right? Isn't that why we had to overlook everything about this criminal piece of shit? We had to overlook the fact that he tried to overthrow the republic, you know, steal an election, incited a violent insurrection. We have to overlook the fact that You know, he was adjudicated of having sexually abused a woman, having engaged in massive fraud. He was indicted how many friggin' times? He stole classified documents. And on and on and on. This is truly a despicable human being. And then, of course, what he said the other day about Rob Reiner just goes to what kind of detestable scum that this man is. We had to overlook all of that because his one saving grace is that he is a genius when it comes to business, right? I mean, isn't that what The Apprentice told us? And so we had to overlook all of that to save our economy. That's what 2024 was about, right? Well, how did that go? Not too well. Again, I've got numbers about that I'm going to talk about later today. But the economy in the toilet, getting worse every single friggin' day, and the American people know it. And they are turning solidly against him. Anyway, back to the article. Green told Caitlin Collins on The Source that the quote, Dan...
You know why America's gonna go through it harder? Let me explain to you why. Because while this world war just began across the globe, involving multiple countries, multiple allies, and we have presidents committing crimes, America's also gonna go through a civil war. Just like back in the day when we were fighting for our rights. No. Just because a world war going on, that don't mean that a civil war is on pause. That don't mean that we stop doing what we gotta do in this country. We still got shit to do. But while we're fixing the shit in the country, you know what our president's doing? Fucking shit up for us outside this country.
What's going on in America is civil war, and we need to start calling it that. It's time for a chat, friends. Last night I sat down to write my weekly newsletter that has been on pause since the 10th of September. And honestly, I thought, am I gonna hit publish on this? It was the first time ever that I've written something and didn't just proofread it and hit, yep, publish, go ahead. There was a moment where I thought, oh, I talk about Charlie Kirk in here and I mentioned that America's in a civil war. Do I really want to publish this? Are Americans going to take this in, or are they going to lash out? But when I woke up this morning, I was shocked that I didn't have people in my comment sections disagreeing with me. I didn't have angry messages from Americans saying, how dare you, don't make light of what's going on, blah, 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 blah. They were agreeing with me. And I have to say, I was pretty shocked. I was expecting full-blown Americans denying what's going on and saying, Canadians are being reactionary, the rest of the world is out of control, blah, blah, blah. That didn't happen. And that's because we all know what's happening is a civil war. If you want to read what I wrote, you can. It's here. It's called Evergreen Current is the newsletter. This is the article. I have been pointing out that America is currently under a totalitarian regime since the 11th of March of this year. It met all 5 of the criteria to be considered a totalitarian regime. And I have repeated that over and over and over, and people have not really caught on to that reality. And I imagine it's very difficult because you're still going about your daily life, a lot of people. You can go to the store and get your favorite candy and argue about Taylor Swift and hang out with your friends and watch the football game. That all seems very normal. Unless you're one of the people in Chicago who's having your apartment building raided and your children zip-tied naked in the street. Because war doesn't necessarily feel the same to everyone all at once. There are people right now in Ukraine who are going to school and eating dinners with their friends. There are also a lot of people who have lost their lives in a war that is being inflicted upon them by Russia. In Germany, kids went to school. There were dinner parties. Life went on for a lot of people, and it didn't for a lot more. I think people are expecting everything to look the way it might in the movies, where it's all happening in your neighborhood to everyone all at once. But fascism doesn't happen that way. The creeping in of fascism is allowing you to feel secure to go about your daily life while knowing that somebody in another city is undergoing the most unthinkable horrors. There are specific criteria to define something as totalitarianism or fascism. Civil war is a lot more argued amongst people what constitutes a civil war, but basically it comes down to something happening within the same country, and a sustained conflict. It just has to be two groups against each other for a sustained period of time. And we know this is the language that Trump is using. He has called Chicago a war zone before sending in ICE. He called Portland war ravaged. He rebranded the Department of Defense to the Department of War. He gave a speech to the generals in which he said this was a war from within. And then also a leaked memo that went out through ABC News to Congress. It was a leaked memo that was to Congress. ABC News got a hold of it. Is the Trump administration telling Congress that they were waging a secret war and they weren't going to let Congress know who the enemies were. They weren't naming the actual enemies in that war, and they were just acting without congressional approval. You can actually read more about that here. This is from October 2nd. Miriam Khan wrote about it. The U.S. is engaged in formal armed conflict with terrorist drug cartels. But there's also information about that memo. There's a lot of different articles that have been written by ABC News and the New York Times about the memo that went out to Congress. Basically, it doesn't stop him from waging war inside U.S. borders as well. Additionally, you may have missed this, but on September 26th, the White House put out this article called Democrats' Unhinged Crusade Against ICE Fuels Bloodshed. They talk about the shooting that happened in Texas. A maniac with anti-ICE ammo gunned down an ICE field office in attack clearly targeted at ICE personnel, lays bare the deadly consequences of Democrats' unhinged crusade against our border enforcement. But it doesn't stop there. This is literally the article. It says, Democrats have spent years vilifying ICE as fascist, the Gestapo, and slave patrols, inciting a 1,000% surge in assaults on agents and a wave of radical left terror. Their words just aren't reckless. They're a battle cry for violence. And then it lists the enemies of the states. Governor Tim Walz, would have been Kamala Harris's vice president. Gavin Newsom of California, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Robin Kelly, Jasmine Crockett, Sylvia Garcia. This list goes on. This is still, if they're basically naming every probably Democrat that you know of and what they've done, and they're listing sources, and it keeps going and going and going. This is on the official whitehouse.gov website, that they are listing enemies of the United States as their own democratically elected officials. He also signed a new executive order that allows them to go after what they're labeling as democratic terrorists, who are just whatever they want to deem them as, but also two major donors to Democratic parties. That's it. They name two official people, and then the rest is just whatever they decide it's going to be. We've seen the speeches from Pete Hegseth, who's in charge of the Department of War. We've seen the words from Stephen Miller. There is no doubt about what's going on in the United States right now. It is a civil war. And yet over the weekend, I saw somebody posting where he said, guys, what if things start to get really bad? Like, should I be preparing for if it gets bad? I feel silly even asking that. And every single response that I saw, especially ones from Canadians, were like, dude, why are you not already prepared? I think there's a lot of people in America who still either don't know what's going on or don't think this could be real, or worse, support it. And I think America as the world has known it is over. And that's going to piss a lot of people off if we're saying that. We are watching the fall of an empire. We are watching the rise of fascism, totalitarianism, the oligarchs, the technocrats. This is all happening. And so last night when I watched J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, he actually came out and said that we need to call this what it is, Trump's invasion. He was talking about Trump sending Texas National Guard troops into Illinois and Oregon and other states. Basically, Trump has just decided that the Texas National Guard is going into blue states. And J.B. Pritzker said we need to call this an invasion. And I would challenge people to say one step further. It's a civil war. The sooner that you admit what's going on, hopefully the faster you'll be able to organize or at least deal with the consequences of what's happening. I know a lot of people have asked for months now, as Canadians have been, myself included, saying that there have been drastic effects to Canada during this time. This morning alone, Trump announced that there's now a 25% tariff on any like heavy duty truck that has to travel from Canada into America is going to be tariffed 25%. And I don't think Americans realize how badly that's going to affect our two nations. It'll affect Canada's economy for sure. It's also going to affect all of you. I think I'm not sure if you're prepared for the fact, Americans are prepared for the fact that the world is pivoting away from you. And I still am getting questions, as I have for the last few months, from Americans saying, well, can't we just move to Canada? Countada's population is about 40 million people. And America's population is 300-ish million people, probably more than that now. We couldn't take in even half of your population. Half of your population would be like 4 times our population. We cannot take that in. We do not have the resources for our current population. So that's not an option. There is nobody who's going to come and save you. Other nations don't get involved in civil wars. Other nations outside of America do not get involved in civil wars. So unfortunately, this is on you guys. And I know this doesn't seem like a very hopeful post, and it's very long, and I don't really know that many people will see it, but it's up to you now. And the rest of the world just has to watch from the outside. And I would encourage everyone to take photos, write things down, make sure that you have recorded history for the future when people asked how this happened and what it felt like. Your stories are the stories they're going to need to hear.
MAGA genuinely wants a civil war, and that's why Trump's acting the way he is. They are trying to stoke the flames and get people to react so that he has the authority to declare martial law. And in that instance, he could legally suspend due process and basically just hold people as prisoners if they're a threat to the stability of the United States. And we're already seeing instances of this happen now, like transgender people are unable to get passports. A lot of them are unable to leave the country. Leftist activists have been put on actual terror watch lists. Who knows, I might be on one. Here's a post in the MAGA Facebook group about civil war, which again, they want. They want a purge because they want the authority to legally use all these weapons they've been collecting to go out and take out their enemies. They want to take out people of color, queer people, trans people, any minority, outspoken leftists, or race traitors, which I've been called numerous times. And it's a lot of the people who have Confederate flags in their yard that want to recreate that Confederacy. So they have the legal authority and moral authority to take out their enemies to people. A lot of wars have been fought in the name of Christianity, and I genuinely believe that people on the right would see this as such. They would see it as like a holy war to preserve their way of life.
So we can expect civil war in the United States. Then you're going to have the Americans start to attack Venezuela and possibly other countries in South America. So America is in for a bad time, okay? China, yeah, I mean, Japan and China and India, they're all going to have conflicts with each other. But also what we should expect is that America starts to embargo China, meaning America uses its sea power to block China from accessing resources from overseas. And China imports most of its oil and a lot of its food. So if there's a blockade of China, you can expect the Chinese economy to really suffer, okay? All right. And then what we can expect to happen is America at some point will go to war with Iran. And this will destroy both countries, okay? Iran will not lose this war, but it won't win this war either because America is just going to bomb the crap out of Iran. It's going to send Iran back decades. But America will lose this war, but this is important because if America loses this war, it's forced out of the Middle East. And once it's forced out of the Middle East, all its military assets goes to Israel, which creates the Pax Judaica. Yeah, does that make sense, guys? That's the plan. Okay, now you have Pax Judaica.
Governor Walz has just announced that they may be at war with the United States government. He has issued a warning call to the National Guard of Minnesota. They have about 7,500 who are in active training this week with a total of 13,000 service members. He said the National Guard is there in Minnesota to protect U.S. citizens against ICE, and he will deploy them if necessary. He said this administration is governing through fear and terror, and that the U.S. citizens in Minnesota obviously need protection from the U.S. government at this point. He said ICE agents were tampering with evidence after they took this woman's life. He said, not only do we have the right, but we have the duty to protest. But he encouraged everyone to do it peacefully. He said that we have the right to march and to gather, to hold signs, to yell what you want. He said over and over again to avoid any kind of violence. We have hit a tipping point in this country. The Trump administration has decided to take out anybody in their way. Please stand with Minnesota.
Y'all believe a civil war is coming in our country? Like a civil war is going to be happening in our lifetime? Or y'all think, hey, sometimes things just get out of control for a little bit, then everything comes back into its norm? Or do you feel like, no, at this point, it's going to be some fighting going on, there's going to be some pow going on, and things are getting really bad and things that we can't recover from? What are y'all thoughts? Because I'm hearing that civil war is a possibility. And some people might even think it already started, man. But what are y'all thoughts?
Many Americans right now are scared. They're frightened. They're nervous. They don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years, possibly even weeks. There's just no telling how things can unfold. You guys remember back 3, 4, 5 years ago where we had this thing that was going around the world and people thought, it's the same as just a normal flu. It'll go by with no problem. And then you turn on the news, and the news would show tolls of lives being lost, the numbers going up higher and higher every day, not just here in the United States, but overseas as well. Then we started taking it very seriously, and then people were freaking out, scared, nervous to go outside. Some people couldn't even go outside at all for many months, even years. They had to stay locked indoors, major lockdowns across the globe, and there was just no telling what would happen next. Do you remember at that time how you felt? You perhaps felt signs of anxiety, probably felt a little bit of fear. You didn't know exactly what would happen. Fast forward to 2026, and we're starting to feel the same thing, but for a different reason. And that reason is what we read about in our history books back in the day. We read about the Civil War of 1861, which ended in 1865, 4 years where the Union fought the Confederacy. And basically, the Southern states wanted to secede from the Union. And that was the main basis of the war. Yes, it was slavery too, and slavery did play a big role, but generally, the South and the North were going at war with one another because one was more pro-slavery and the other one was so-called anti-slavery, so-called. And the reasons why we're fighting today is uniquely slavery, but not in a sense of, enslaved Africans or enslaved Black people. It's more the slavery of the American lifestyle and the American mindset being imprisoned and being forced to behave and act a certain way. Now, whether you're for or against President Trump, that doesn't matter in this video because there were people in these clips that were obviously anti-Trump, and there may be some that were slightly pro, and there may be some that are indifferent. But that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is for us to check our reality. And our reality right now is very grim. The fact of the matter is, as Americans, we're facing a major threat globally. We're facing a major threat domestically, and we don't even understand what's in front of us right now. We've only read about it in the history books, but back then we didn't have AI. We didn't have the internet. Heck, we didn't even have cell phones. So people had to guess what would happen next back then. The scary thing about today is that we see what's in front of us because we have all these medium to see through. We have these forms of media where we can view what's happening. We can view, at least publicly, whatever they discuss, what the president of the United States and the government are doing at the moment, internationally and domestically. And I think the best thing for us to do as statesmen and stateswomen is to check our reality, understand what we're facing right now, and understand how we should maneuver, right, through these difficult times. Now, here are a few suggestions, if you will. The first thing is if you want to stay local, meaning if you want to stay within the United States of America, your best bet is to try to go to an area in which you feel that it would be safe for you and your family. Now, some people may argue that that might be Alaska. I beg to differ because it's too close to Russia. And if something goes down, you might get caught in the crosshairs. Some people say, well, that will be in the south of the United States. Well, that's now presenting a new threat because Trump has been going to war with Venezuela. And obviously, Venezuela is to the south of the United States. So anyone that crosses in through Mexico, which they obviously can because Mexico's borders are a joke, that can be present a new terroristic threat. Some people say, well, middle of the country. Well, with the mass shootings happening, which are predominantly happening in the middle of America, the heartland, I don't know if during the Civil War that would be the best place for us to go. So, is there any place in America that's safe right now? I have no clue. All I know is that there are tons and tons and tons of Americans leaving the country, going abroad to Europe, to Asia, to Africa, to Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand. And they're finding new ways of life, right? Even some going to South America, which may be a little bit more risky, especially with Trump's plans, as you've heard of in the media. But it's definitely an option. And what are they going? Where are they going? What are they looking for? They're looking for a different life. They're looking for a life in which there is less overt corruption. Because let's call a spade a spade. There's corruption in almost every country, right? There's some form of corruption that happens. And it's up to us to determine, is that corruption that happens either on the government level or on the sort of citizen level, is that corruption bad enough for us? Excuse me. Is that corruption bad enough for us to live a good life in, or to live among the others who are also facing hardships due to that corruption? Is it necessarily as bad as the United States? I would also agree, and maybe I'll have some detractors on this, but I would also say that US corruption is still not as bad as in other countries, right? So we just got to be honest. I know we're going through some issues right now, guys, but at the end of the day, the corruption here is not as bad. However, it's getting worse. It's getting to the levels of a third world country. What makes a third world country a third world country? Usually, it's the politicians and the government who are super corrupt, who don't really have the best interests of the people in mind, and they make decisions and pass laws that don't benefit the people, but rather benefit themselves, either for financial gain or political power. And that's usually what the case is. So at the end of the day, we as Americans, we have to take a stand, not necessarily to fight the government. We don't want to do that because we'll never win that. What we have to do is take a stand to let our voices be heard on these matters, because just screaming on social media is not going to do it. And if for those who are wondering, well, why don't you say something? You're well spoken or whatever the case is. Listen, my job is just to report on these things. My job is not necessarily to go in front of the government and say what the issues are. They already know what the issues are. They're educated on that. What we need is to move in numbers in a non-violent way and just to voice our opinions and tell them how we're feeling. Because let's call it what it is. If nothing happens, if we continue to be silent, if we continue to vote the wrong candidate into office, if we continue to go with the same two-party system, what eventually will happen is that you will have more violence than ever before, to the likes of which you've never seen. And that's what we don't want in these days and times, right? We don't want more violence. We want more peace. We want more tranquility. We want the ability to put our kids in school without fears of them being shot in the classroom. We want the ability to go to work and have a job without the fears of losing it, and to the point where we can't afford health care because the healthcare costs are rising. We want healthcare that's reliable, dependable, and affordable. That's what we want. And if we can't get it, then maybe we need to look elsewhere to get it. And I want to keep you guys to keep in mind, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in which members of the LGBTQ community are losing their passports. I'm not sure for the reasons why. Some people say it's the government. Some people say poor management of passport. I don't know. I just think it's rather fishy what's happening right now. And that's why a lot of people are feeling that the country is becoming more fascist. Because in a fascist regime, you normally have a country in which there are no rights respected of the civilians of the country, right? The civilians and the citizens of the country essentially lose power in their vote, right? And they usually have to go along with a totalitarian regime, and that's the fact of the matter. So we have to say something about it. We have to do something about it. We have to make the right decisions in our lives. If we can't move together as a group because of the fact that we may be divided along racial lines, because obviously racism for many plays a big role for those who believe or subscribe to that ideology that race matters. More power to you. It doesn't matter for me. As an American, that's what I am. I'm proud of my country. I love my country, and it's a shame to see that it's coming to what it's coming to. But going back to what I said before, we need to move together as a unit, and if that cannot happen, then we need to figure out how do we empower ourselves on an individual level so that collectively we become stronger. And by default, we become a unit to be reckoned with, because then the government understands, okay, well, the people won't fall in line. What can we really do? They can either take one or two options. Either one, they commit crimes against humanity within the country, or two, they decide to grant our wish to be treated with respect as citizens of the country. So, every country at some point is met with this difficult decision because of the wrong actors in office or the wrong actors on the military field. And then for that reason, we need to just voice our opinions and voice the truth. Okay. So I think that's where we are right now as a nation. And time will tell. Will there be a civil war? I hope not. I mean, there may be a world war before there's a civil one. I'll probably have a video about that coming up, so stay tuned. Make sure, guys, you like this video right here. Show your boys some love. Subscribe to this channel. YouTube thinks you'll like this right here. Give that one a click. I'll see you on the next one. And God bless.